to Spatial UNCP. I am Jesse Rouse from the Department of Geology and Geography.
I'm Nathan from the Department of Geology and Geography.
And we are Wilds. No, never mind. Really bad 80s reference. Though, of course, we're all just desperately waiting for the filming to restart on Bill and Ted's 3, right?
Yep.
Very
Yep.
spatial, very
Can't wait
important.
to see that.
So, what are we doing this week?
What's the topic of the week? It's
Oh, okay. So we're both not sure.
data.
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 We're gonna have a lot of words that we say differently.
Yes.
It's okay because words can be said differently from different parts of the country and different parts of the world. Um, so we're looking at data and where to find data. Now, in terms of geography, especially in terms of the software that we use a lot of times for geography, GIS, mapping technologies, why is data important? That's a question for you.
It's because it's what we make our pretty pictures out of. It's what we make our maps from.
But where does it come from? I mean, so what is data? Kind of getting to that philosophical question.
So we're going into, I guess, what is it? It's basically it's whatever it is that we want to look at, right? So we wake up in the morning or read the paper, watch the news, and we go, gee, that looks interesting. So I want to look and see what the spatial pattern is of this. So the data that we collect is generally associated with, are we interested in the spatial distribution of topic?
Okay. I think you covered both information and data there. So information, of course, kind of this uh, in this context, qualitative, descriptive, exploratory approach of getting just general information, whether it's from the newspaper, going out and finding some of these things and creating our own information from what we see in the maps or in the newspaper. Data also then the things that we go through and collect. A lot of times for GIS, it's quantitative, though we have more and more qualitative capabilities with spatial data again. Geography, of course, the name means writing about the Earth. So we started out as descriptive and qualitative. And of course, through the scientific method and the empirical revolution, we saw a lot of move to quantitative, and I'm getting way off track there. So data, of course, is these files of information that we use.
Was that where you wanted me to go with that?
There's so many different ways to go with it. So, you had gone broader than that. So I wanted to bring data back to, it's what we're going through and collecting, for those of us who collect data, and then what we use to do analysis with in the software and what we use to make maps with in that software. So, yeah, data. So this week we wanted to talk a little bit about where we could find some spatial data sources, right?
Yep.
Okay. Want to make
sure. Got to have something to work with through that blank old space that shows up whenever you turn on ArcMap is really intimidating. There's nothing there.
The empty window.
The empty window. Now what?
So, one, and we'll get back to this kind of at the end of these tabs, is that you can take advantage of data that's built into or at least accessible from Arc's products, Esri's products. So don't think that it's completely a bare map. You can go to add data and find data in the software. But again, it's pointing to somebody else's data, and you need to know long-term issues with that data. We won't get into that today. But in North Carolina, we have access to a great portal. Today, we're really focusing more on kind of social, humanistic type of data. Next time, we'll talk more about physical data.
Actually, a lot of states have a nice portal like this. I was just looking up data for Hawaii, and they have a one map data port just like this, which is really nice and easy to use. So I'm thinking that a lot of other states are moving towards a collection point like this for GIS data.
A lot of it is because of federal guidelines and guidance. Others is just because the state realizes how important this is. But for North Carolina,
Yeah.
nc1map.gov is our portal. And as you can see, it has access to a wide range of not just data, but web apps as well. So you don't necessarily have to be able to download and use it locally. You can also use a lot of this in the web if you want to. But for us, of course, doing analysis, still doing analysis on the desktop software is much more in depth and extendable than doing it online. So here's just a few examples of the types of data that you can get from NC1Map. Now, for us, we're focusing on education for the data set we want to grab for our example. So I could go back up to the top and type in schools, or I can just click on education like I just did and grab this public schools data. Now from NC1Map, it's using a pretty straightforward Esri interface. So a lot of organizations that use Esri, you'll see this type of data clearinghouse. It's basically Esri's open data interface where you can come to the site. You'll see an example of the data, get an idea of the types of attributes that are included in the data, as well as related data sets. But most important for us, since we're downloading the data, is we can come over to download, and we can download it as a spreadsheet, as a KML file if you wanted to take it into Google Maps or something along those lines. A shapefile is what we want, though, for
Or Google Earth.
software. Google Maps, Google Earth, yeah, both use KML file. And of course, you can bring KML file into ArcMap and ArcGIS Online and all of Arc's products as well, or Essie's products as well. Now, whenever we download it, it comes down, most GIS data comes down as a zip file because a shapefile, which is kind of the standard vector format, is actually made up of multiple files. And so we need to extract it to a location. So I can open this, and it'll pop up, and I can either use the extract all tool, or I can come over here and select the data and move it to the location I want it in. Now I have set up a folder called Spatial. I can select this and drag it over, but since I've already placed it there, I can come over and see that my public schools is here. And whenever we look at it, then in ArcMap, we come to Add Data, which is this plus sign with the yellow background, and Add Data. Now, you do need to tell it where the data is going to be, so you're going to have to connect to your folder using ArcMap. ArcGIS Pro is a little bit different. So I would just go in and go to my PC and see in Spatial, since that's where I set up my folder. I've already set that up. That's why you're seeing this. And so I'm just going to scroll over to public schools and add that.
And that's one of the important ideas with bringing in data and working with ArcMap is a little bit of planning beforehand. Where are you going to put the folder and what drive are you going to be working from?
So kind of data organization.
Data organization, yeah.
We can do a lot of different things to this. These are a little more advanced than we want to get into today. But one thing we can do is, change the symbol. So what kind of symbol would you like to see today?
I'm always partial to the circle myself.
Just regular old circle?
Well, let's do a hexagon though. Let's live dangerously. Let's either do a
Any
pentagon or a
particular
hexagon.
color?
Let's be different.
Any particular color you want today?
Let's see. Let's do orange.
So an orange is Servile or Seville orange?
Sure. Seville.
Seville. So the
Aren't you going to want to make your size smaller? Oh, okay.
again, this is just for a quick example. Now, another data source that we have access to is the national map. The national map is a little bit clunky, but it does have the authoritative data for the United States. So if you want to find data, you can click on download from the national map.
There it is. National map viewer is what you want.
There we go. Whenever you're Googling, Google the national map viewer, and then once you do arrive here, you're going to want to go up and click on download data once it comes up. There we go.
There we go.
So just looking at the data or that first page gives you an idea of what's there, but to actually download, you need to be on this particular page, which is viewer.nationalmap.gov/basic. I want to get boundaries for the counties in North Carolina. I'm going to zoom in so that it's only grabbing data around the state. So it's using the map as the extent of data I want. Whenever I have boundaries selected, I can click on Find Products. It will find what boundaries are available in this area. And I'm going to go with the one that says the territorial, and I want to make sure that it's the shapefile, not the file geodatabase, because again, I'm using shapefiles for my example. So either is good. I'm going to add it to the cart, view my cart, and I can just download it from there. Now I've already done that and extracted it and brought it into map. So here are my counties from that. Now, of course, you're seeing things beyond North Carolina as well as North Carolina's counties. Any thoughts on this data?
Yeah, but I mean, no, but I mean, there's different ways of cutting out the state and counties that you want, but we can show that at a different time.
Well, we'll show that there are different states, so we can
Oh,
recolor
that's
it
a good idea.
by the different states. And so again, next time we'll show you how to clip out so it's just the North Carolina counties. But this is a way to go. And of course, if you downloaded this from the NC1 map, you would have just got North Carolina counties.
Yeah. Yeah,
So,
which is easier, but it's good to know where you can get information from different places.
how about, there we go, our urban data.
Natural Earth. That's a good site for all world data. Making quick maps
So tell us a little bit about it.
of the world. Don't know much about it actually. I forget who designed it, who put it together, but it's a free open source. Everything that's on there is available and it's all editable, and you can anything that you can pretty much think of is available on this site, and it also offers vector graphics for creating backgrounds.
You mean raster?
Isn't that what I said?
I said vector.
Oh, raster. Yeah.
So quick note, raster, of course, is pixel-based and kind of a continuous data set behind you. So if you're talking about elevation or those type of data where you have something everywhere, that would be good as raster. Pictures, of course, are raster. And then vector is where we have data in just specific areas. So instead of being continuous, it's discrete data just in the areas that we have it. So what we've used so far is vector data because it only exists in the areas where we have it. There's nothing outside of that. We've used polygon data, we have point data. We're not going to use any line data, but what's an example of line data?
Rivers.
Rivers is a good one. Um, roads, another
Roads.
one.
Yeah. Transportation. Railroads. Yeah.
Railroads that we know all too well.
Yeah.
But from Natural Earth, we grabbed a urban data set. Now I'm going to change the color of this real quick to make it a little bit darker. And then I'm going to zoom out to the extent of this data set. So far we've been grabbing data from a very specific area. But whenever we look at natural Earth data, what's its extent?
It's the whole world.
It's always, I'd never know if the answer is sad or statement is sad or amusing whenever you look at something like
North
the Korean
Korea.
Peninsula, where you have the massive urban populations in South Korea beginning to get into some of the urban populations in China. And you have Pyongyang, and that's it.
Yeah, that's pretty sad.
I forget what this one's name is.
Isn't that where the ski resort is?
Does North Korea have a ski resort?
Yeah, one.
Okay, well, there you go. That's probably it. We're going to zoom back over to our North Carolina data. So as you may have noticed, I've been right-clicking on the name of the layer, and it gives us access to a lot of things. Everything from looking at the attribute table to being able to zoom in to that layer.
Those are probably the two most important functions when working with data in ArcMap. Is particularly the zoom to layer. Oftentimes, you might bring in a layer of new data, and your screen will look blank, and but you'll see the line to the left there underneath the layers. And a quick, fast way to find it, obviously, is to right-click on the name of your topic and then zoom to that layer. And then from there, you can figure out what needs to be adjusted. The other important is that attributes layer, which is one of the things that makes ArcMap such a powerful tool, is that it lays everything out in an Excel type file system. So you can actually see what data is available with this layer, what it is that you are looking at, because oftentimes you bring in points, and if you bring in dozens of different point data, if you don't label it immediately, you often get confused about what point represents what. Opening up the attributes layer will tell you what it is, what that point is representing.
And so, for instance, the attributes from the public schools, give us a lot of things that we can do with it. One of the things that we can do that's tied to symbology is, well, what if we only wanted to see high schools? Well, we can come under and say, okay, well, schools that include high schools, add that value. Yes. Yep. Turn this off, and we'll change this symbology to be a green circle instead, because I'm lazy. I'm just going to do that. So those are places that are just high schools. So we went from having a layer that was all the public schools in North Carolina to just the high schools, just by using that one attribute that we found in the attribute table. And of course, analysis is what we use a lot of those other types of columns for as well. So whenever we're looking at other types of information, such as, I don't know, the average household income.
Oh yeah.
That's providing information for each of the counties, and if we zoom in, it'll go down to the track and block that we can do analysis with, and we're using that automatically to take advantage of the information. Now, this data is coming from our last tab up here, and that's ArcGIS Online. So not only can you go there and create your own maps online, you can also get data from it. So for instance, this time, income. There we go. We can look for all types of data. And not only can we interact with those online, but we can also interact with them here. So where before we just went to add data, we can also go to add data from ArcGIS Online. Now, for certain data layers, you do need to have an organization account, because they cost a few credits, which we have lots and lots of credits to utilize. So if it asks you to log in, contact us, and we can provide you the login information if you haven't already received that or asked for it before. So here I've looked up income. I've looked throughout ArcGIS Online, not just our data in the university. And this is that same layer that I turned on just a second ago. So I would click add, and it would just add it to the map. Any thoughts?
Pretty simple.
Okay. So there was one last layer that we decided to add yesterday, because we wanted to see not just where schools were sitting in terms of economic areas and urban areas. We wanted to see, since we are in an election year, how they fit within the congressional districts. So we went back to NC1 map and we went back to the search and typed in Congress and got the current congressional districts for North Carolina for 2019. And we added those to ArcMap as well. Any comments, any thoughts?
Yeah, I think you should do the symbology, the regular symbology for the parties. I think that'd be more interesting.
I'm not sure this data set has that.
We won't make any comments about it.
Well, no, I'm just not sure. Yeah, this data set doesn't have who was elected into the district. If you want that type of information, we can go back to ArcGIS Online and look
I thought we had
for
that.
congressional districts from ArcGIS Online. So the 116th Congress, we'll add that. This is a national data set, so a little bit larger in terms of its scope. So there you see unknown, Democratic, Republican. And again, we can zoom to layer and get the whole US, because of course a little bit of, it's weird that it's not showing, oh, we zoomed out too far for it to show. But that's why whenever it goes kind of a grayish color, that's what it's saying, is that you're zoomed too far out to be able to see it. So as we zoom back in, you'll be able to get to that data. Still not there. Oh, there it goes. One thing I will say is that with ArcGIS Online data, it is slow because it's reading it from an online source. So that's one of the reasons I switched to using the local copy of the congressional districts, because it just draws faster. Data that's being created and shared by Esri itself is a little bit faster because, of course, they put a lot more servers into behind their own data. But other people's data, so if I go back to Congress and we look at who created that, yeah, it's somebody else. And so they could be running off their own server, those type of things. Yeah, so if it says Esri underneath it, like this one, that one would probably run a little bit faster.
That's one that we had looked at the other
It
day.
also has a better color ramp. That's a separate issue. And better data. Okay, so that is creating a map in ArcMap. Any thoughts on that, or bringing data into ArcMap? We haven't really taken it into a mapping yet, so that would be going into the layout view, which you can either do down here or go to view and layout view.
We can
We've
talk
done
about
page
that
view
later.
so far. You can always go through, if you're working ahead of us, you can change the orientation of paper and all of that, but you also have to change the shape and size of your map view.
If you do work ahead and you're dealing with a lot of data and you find that your computer is slow, I recommend that when you work in the layout, you turn off layers except for the basic outline of whatever state or country that you're dealing with. And as you fit it onto your page, it'll make it work a lot faster, because every time you make a movement on the screen with your data, ArcMap has to redraw. So the more layers that you have, the more information that you have, the slower your computer is going to run.
And that's especially true for online layers. So if you're doing it with local data, it's a little bit less of an issue, but if you're definitely if you're including some sort of online layer, it's going to hugely increase the amount of time that you're waiting as you zoom around.
Or if
Of
you have an
course,
old computer.
old computer, if you're looking at global maps as opposed to state or local maps, yeah, all of these play into how fast it can draw.
And again, to turn layers on and off, you just click that little check mark that's next to the name of the layer.
Now, we've been talking about ArcMap this whole time, but there is also ArcGIS Pro. And I just wanted to give you a quick look at what this same thing looked like over here. So again, our symbology is in a different place. We can go through and change our appearance. So we want this to be a little bit darker so it shows up better. The apply button is behind another window. There we go. So there's our urban areas around the world, but to zoom, we do the exact same thing, right click and zoom to layer. And I did the same thing earlier. Our urban areas are the red ones. We have the yellow for the congressional districts, the counties. I made the state the UNCP gold, approved color for gold. The schools are dark gray and surrounding counties light gray. So again, it's a different application. As you can see, very different interface between ArcGIS Pro and ArcMap. If you are focusing more on making maps, use ArcMap and ArcGIS Desktop. If you are going to do more analysis, then I would say get to know ArcGIS Pro first. In the end, since we're in a transition between the two, it's good to know both of them, but as you're just getting started, if you're doing analysis, it's better to start with ArcGIS Pro right now, because it's just easier to learn one piece of software at a time. But if you are doing maps, stick with the older, more proven ArcGIS desktop software, ArcMap. I don't know. Any thoughts beyond that?
Oh, no, I agree with that. Arc Pro does offer more utility with statistical analysis and aerial analysis, I found whenever I worked with it, but ArcMap is definitely a stronger mapping cartographic tool. Couldn't say the word. Cartographic tool software to use to make an actual map.
Yeah, I mean, to create a map, you have to go in here and create a separate layout, which creates a new tab, and then you tell it which thing to add to it, and it's definitely slower than creating a map in ArcMap. Wow, definitely slower. You might notice a couple of tabs in here that I have: military tools and crime analysis. Those of you in criminal justice might want to, look at this, because this is taking advantage of some. I think it's called military
Extensions?
analyst is the extension. Yeah, there's lots of extensions to both Map and Pro.
We have
That
access to all of them, don't we?
Most of them. So if it's made by Esri, then we have access to it. If it's made by a third party, then it's kind of hit and miss as to whether we do. Because of course they want to make money off of the things they made for third parties, or third parties want to make their money. So I could just come in here, draw my map frame, populate it. Then I could go through and add my north arrow, scale bar, legend, title, all those things. You can see those appear in ArcGIS Pro and ArcMap. They're all under the insert here. So title, text, neat line, legend, north arrow, scale bar, all those are available.
We can show that later.
Yeah. I think that is it. We have found some data. We have brought it in. Next week, we're going to find some physical data and bring it in.
Let's get physical.
And the week after that, we're going to come back to our data we worked with this week and do a little analysis. Again, clipping out to just the counties of North Carolina, or the state of North Carolina, doing a little analysis between the points, and those type of things. And that's it on my end.
Yeah.
Anything to take us out?
Just do it the old traditional way. Bye.
Okay. If you do have any questions for us about getting access to data, getting access to the software, getting access to ArcGIS Online, then yeah, email us. Head over to uncp.edu/geo and then go down to contacts. You can find both of our information under the faculty contacts. And that's all I've got. Okay. So we're sticking with last week's bye?
Yep.
Goodbye.